For decades, the internet has repeated one of the strangest so-called true mysteries ever shared online. A man who arrived at a Japanese airport carrying a passport from a country that doesn't exist. A man who claimed he came from a nation called Taured. And a man who, according to the legend, vanished from a locked hotel room before authorities could question him. It's a disturbing story, it's eerie, and it's almost completely fake. But the real story behind it is somehow even stranger. Tonight we're diving deep into the myth, the truth, and the bizarre historical event that gave birth to the man from Taured. The internet version, the fake story. The modern internet version begins in Japan in the early 1960s. A well-dressed businessman arrives at Tokyo's Haneda Airport. Nothing unusual until he hands over his passport. The officers freeze. The passport looks authentic. It has stamps from multiple countries. It has the man's photo. It has visas, signatures, everything. But the country printed on the cover is Taured. The officers tell him the country doesn't exist. The man becomes confused, even irritated. He insists Taured is a real nation located between France and Spain. "Look at the map," he supposedly tells them. "It's right there." The airport staff pull out a map. They point to Andorra, the tiny real nation that sits between France and Spain. But the man shakes his head. "No," he says, "Taured has existed for over 1,000 years." The officers, unsure how to handle him, bring him to an isolated room. They take his wallet, his foreign currency, his work documents. Everything looks legitimate, but from a country nobody has ever heard of. They escort him to a hotel for overnight observation. 2 guards stand outside the door all night. But the next morning, he's gone. Not just missing, gone. Vanished from a locked room with no balcony, no open window, and guards who swear he never came out. And his passport, gone. His belongings, gone. Every trace of him, gone. Some people claim he slipped through parallel dimensions. Some say he came from an alternate Earth where Taured really does exist. Others think he was a time traveler, or a government agent, or something else entirely. It's one of the internet's favorite mysteries. But almost none of it is true. The real story, what actually happened. To understand the truth, we have to go back, not to the 1960s, but to the 1950s, and even earlier. There was a real incident involving a man with a passport from a non-existent country. But the story didn't happen in Japan. It didn't involve a disappearance, and the country wasn't called Taured. The real case comes from a French book published in 1979 titled The Directory of Possibilities. Inside, it was an account of a strange encounter that supposedly happened many decades earlier. A man arriving at a European border, claiming to be from a country authorities had never heard of. But here's the twist. This wasn't a supernatural story. It wasn't a parallel universe story, and it had nothing to do with a man vanishing. It was simply a miscommunication, a translation problem, and possibly a case of mental confusion. No locked room, no disappearance, no mysterious documents evaporating into thin air. The Taured name itself, it only appeared much later, when internet storytellers and paranormal bloggers began to rewrite the tale, adding details, twisting the timeline, and slowly evolving it into the dramatic mystery we know today. Most early versions suggest the real man was confused about geography, possibly mentally ill, or possibly misunderstanding the country name due to language barriers. Other researchers believe the story may have been inspired by a real phenomenon: people traveling with passports from countries that changed names, split, or no longer existed. After World War II, borders shifted constantly. Nations dissolved, new ones formed, and citizens sometimes carried documents from countries that technically no longer existed. Cases like these were surprisingly common, so the real Taured man wasn't a dimensional traveler. He was likely a man stuck between bureaucratic systems, outdated maps, and political upheavals. Yet the internet reshaped it into a paranormal legend. Newspaper clippings were fabricated, fake passport photos were created, bloggers added the locked hotel room, forums added the disappearance, and by the time YouTube got a hold of it, the myth had become far more famous than the truth. Why the legend stuck? Even though the story is fake, it survives because it taps into something real, something that scares us. The idea that reality isn't fixed, that borders aren't permanent, that our world might overlap with others, that someone could slip in and slip out without explanation. It's a story about identity, about mystery, about the thin line between what we think we understand and what we don't. And that's why the man from Taured still fascinates people to this day. So yes, the passport was never real, the country never existed, and no man vanished from a locked hotel room in Japan. But the story it became, the legend it evolved into, has traveled farther across the world than the man in the tale ever could. If you enjoy mysteries like this, the myths, the truths, and everything in between, make sure you're subscribed, because in the shadows of history, there are always more stories waiting to be revealed.